Happy Friday, everybody. We've made it to the end of the week, and even better, it is time for your long-awaited, long-anticipated mailbag questions, all answered 100% correctly, or this is important, your money back. I am so ready to get started. I am so ready to wrap up the week with another stellar podcast, so let's get started.
All right, we'll start with some Bucs questions here. And Allie in the UK tweeted, the Bucs won 8 games in 2022. They won 9 in 2023 and 10 in 2024. Will they win 11 games this season?
Well, I'm not one to count, but Ocho Nueve Diaz, I think they're on pace. If the last 3 years follow, they'll win one more game than they did last year.
Once.
Yeah. I don't know. Here's a better question: is like, what will it take? Because in each case, they won the division with 8 wins. And then they needed 9 to win it the next year. And last year, they needed all of 10. They needed all of 10 wins last year. I tend to think it will take 10 or more. I think Atlanta is probably their biggest competition. I'm not really certain about Carolina's gotten better. I don't know that they're ready to take the division just yet. Obviously, any of those teams proved last year they're capable of beating the Bucs. Atlanta did it twice, and that was with Kirk Cousins. I think Atlanta's going to be better this year with some of the moves they've made, particularly on defense. And I think Carolina's going to be better because they finished strong last season and, like I said, gave the Bucs all they could handle. If not for Anthony Nelson stripping the ball of Chuba Hubbard, Carolina's going to kick a field goal and beat them in regulation. Instead, they lose in overtime in a game the Bucs had to win, and then the Bucs, handled them pretty well in Tampa after that. So we don't know exactly what New Orleans is going to be. They seem to be in transition, unsettled, probably a little bit at quarterback now with Derek Carr done. So it's still there to me. It's still their division to win, right? But again, first place schedule, easier on the back half than the front half for sure. They start with 2 on the road. There's some obstacles, and the last 2 years they've hit sort of a swoon, right around October, where they've lost 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7 after 3-1 starts. So I'm not sure record-wise. It feels like to me you're not going to win the NFC South with less than 10 wins this year, and you may well need 11. So it could go 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, they have higher expectations than that. I mean, I'll just tell you that they think that they really have something. Every year is different. You can't predict injuries. You don't know exactly, what teams you're going to play and what condition they're going to be in when you play them, when you get there. So it's all sort of, it's very hard to forecast these things. But when you've been to the postseason 5 years in a row, when you've won the division 4 years in a row, and frankly, other than, I'm a big believer in Michael Penix Jr., but other than Atlanta, I don't think that there's, yes, you can lose to any team, but I don't see a team that's going to win as many games as the Bucs will. But, hey, first place schedule, right? You're playing all the big boys. You're playing all the big boys, and you're going to have to play huge too. But I think this team is better than they were last year. I think they've had one of their best drafts, and that's saying something because I think Jason Light has knocked it out of the park the last 4 years anyway. I think Emeka Egbuka is going to be a huge star in this league, and maybe as a rookie. I really like, Morrison, the cornerback. There's just a lot to like on this football team that's coming back. Their entire offense is back. I mean, every guy that produced yards for them is back. The entire tight end room is back. Your offensive line is intact. Graham Barton's going to be better. It really comes down to, did you do enough to either improve or get better on defense? And we won't know that answer, but Hassan Reddick's a big part of it. I know that. And we haven't seen him yet in the offseason, but we're going to see him at mandatory minicamp from what I understand. Can you limit teams because your football team is capable of averaging almost 30 points a game, but you also have another huge question mark, Josh Grizzard. Grizzard's never called a play. I don't think that's going to be as big a problem as some do. because he's been around it and it's the same system. He's not installing something from fresh, but there's a knack to calling plays. Now
But
Baker
but
has
we
a
saw the
lot of
last 2
leniency.
years. We saw the
Yeah.
last 2 years. Canales got off to a slow start play calling.
Mm-hmm.
Liam Cohen did too.
Yeah.
And you're going to start with your first 2 on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and if you think Atlanta's an improved team from last year,
Right.
you know, you get off to a slow start, that can hurt you. Now,
Well, they've gotten off to 3-1 starts each time the last 2 years.
but the offense has gotten off to slow starts, or the play calling. I would say I don't know if the offense.
I think Canales was a different bird maybe than Liam. I felt like Liam kind of had a better system and a better feel for what they did, almost right. And frankly, he had better players with Bucky. Bucky Irving was something that Canales never had.
And Cohen was a little stubborn to start Bucky.
Yeah,
I waited a long time.
Yeah. His guy was Rashad early on, and then even after Rashad got hurt, he went right back to him as a starter, which didn't make sense. But a little better players, I think, too, for Cohen. The advantage that Josh will have is simply that they haven't changed the system. He's not doing as much install as he is just building on it, so that'll help him. But yeah, I mean, it is 2 on the road to start the year. I think the schedule gets a little easier after the bye week. Their bye week is in the middle of the season, which is a big advantage, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think you're going to have to win at least 10, and I think they're capable of maybe doing better than that. Look, they think they have a Super Bowl team, and I've been watching. This is the time of year where every football show is about lists, right? Most underrated teams in the NFC, or who could take down the Eagles, 1 through 5. Kyle Brandt did this one day on NFL Network, and the number 1 team he had taken down the Eagles was your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He said, look, they've beaten them the last 2 years. They seem to have the anecdote to Jalen Hurts and those guys, and the push and Saquon Barkley and all of that, and they made the playoffs 5 years in a row. Baker Mayfield, really good quarterback. All those weapons are back, like every single one. They've added to it with Mbuka and others. Their defense seems to be better. So, if you're just going to say, give me 5 teams in the NFC, Commanders would be in there. Maybe the Lions, who lost their center, would be in there. The Rams you might throw in there, and then certainly, Philadelphia. But I think the Bucs are no worse than 5, 4, 3, maybe in that mix. I mean, I think they believe that's where they're at, and that's their expectation, is to not only get back to the playoffs, but to get to a championship and then see what they can do. But long way to go, man. Long way to go. But I would say that, yes, if they're going to do what they want to do, okay, which is win the division, get a decently high enough seed to host the playoff game, and maybe then some if things break right, I think 11 wins is probably right on track for them, which is weird, right? To win 8, then 9, then 10, and then maybe 11 this year.
Go Snarf tweeted. He says, in the too early Bucs final roster category, do you see wide receiver Raheem Jarrett and cornerback Josh Hayes as casualties?
I would say Hayes more than Jarrett, because I think Raheem can return kicks. Now, you're going to have Tez Johnson, the Tasmanian Devil, doing kick returns as well, punt returns in particular. And I know that there's been some talk about Trey Palmer maybe being traded. Apparently, there was some interest by the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see if that goes off. Look, if you're a receiver, you're going to have a tough time making this team. But I thought that Jarrett outplayed Palmer for sure at the receiver position when they had those injuries. And I got a little more upside for him than I do for Trey. So, but the numbers aren't good, right? The numbers aren't good. Now, a lot of this depends on when and if Chris Godwin comes back. I mean, I think he'll come back, but what point of the season? You still have a situation with Sterling Shepard that we haven't addressed. He was a valuable member of their team. That might be one where he doesn't make the team like he did last year. He didn't start on the active roster. I think you have to sit out maybe 2 or 3 weeks on the practice squad if you're a vested veteran. But I could see him playing at some point next year. But Rakim, I think because the special teams coverage, gunners, all that. Look, if you're going to dress a receiver, he has to play teams if he's not starting. And when I say starting, I mean I don't know that you're going to mess up, a Buka on that coverage situation. So, who's going to get the helmet on Sunday is really the big thing. And it always comes down to, you're carrying an extra defensive back, extra receiver, that sort of stuff. Is Tez Johnson, is he going to be your kick returner, or is he going to head to the practice squad? I mean, he was your 7th round pick. Although I think he's really electric. But he's only 152 pounds. So a lot of things have to be decided, but I kind of like what Jarrett did. I think he's gotten better every year. I think he's a vertical threat, and from what I've seen, at least in the 2 so OTAs that we watched, and maybe this is just something that they're working on, but with Josh Grizzard calling it, he had a call it period the other day. I'm seeing a lot more vertical shots from Baker Mayfield. Balls down the field, right? And so that plays right into Jarrett's hands. So I would say between those, probably give it to Jarrett, I think.
All right, Aaron had tweeted us. He says, in your opinion, should Simeon Rice's number 97 be retired? He was the Brady of the defense to put the team over the top for Super Bowl 37. I get he was only with the team for a short time, but so was Brady, and it sounds like number 12 will be retired as well. It just seems disrespectful to Simeon, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, whether they retired or not, I guess, is a separate question. Typically, what the Bucs have done, even if the number wasn't retired, is they've taken it out of service. They don't hand it out. I haven't seen anybody. I could be wrong about this. I don't think I've seen anybody wear 97 in a while. But if you're asking me, does he deserve it? Yeah, I think he does. I think he does. He didn't play here as long as John Lynch or Rodney Barber, but he's, to me, has every bit a Hall of Fame resume as those guys do. It's unfortunate, for Simeon that, so many guys in front of him have already made the Hall of Fame off that defense, because the way those voters think is, well, yeah, all those guys are deserving, Sapp, Brooks, Barber, Lynch, but come on now, they only won one Super Bowl. How many more players off that defense is really worthy of the Hall of Fame? And I would say one damn more for sure, because what Rice did was dominate the game during his time that he played. When you average in your career, you have a career average of more than 10 sacks a game. When you are the rookie of the year, when you're, dominate for more than a decade at the edge rusher. And not only that, but the amount of turnovers that guy got was startling. I mean, it was almost rare if Rice got a sack and there wasn't a sack fumble. I mean, he was so good at getting the ball out. Those defenses scored touchdowns because of him. And he hurried a lot of quarterbacks into throwing interceptions that were taken back for touchdowns. I have no question that Simeon Rice has Hall of Fame credentials. What he did for as long as he did it is matched only by guys that are already in the Hall. And I hope one day, that even though it's, many, many years now since he played, but I hope at some point he gets consideration and, advances past the 25. I think he's been to the 25 at least one other time. But look, it took John Lynch 7 tries, right, as a finalist. And Ronnie Barber had to be in that room for a few times. Just get him to 15 where they can actually have the debate in the room about him. And that's when they narrow it down to 10 and then 5. And then you get the class every year of 5 players. But yeah, I hope and expect that he'll make it. As far as retiring his number, I mean, obviously if he goes in the Hall of Fame, they will. But I do not see them handing out 97. I haven't looked at the roster lately. I don't believe that they have that number in use right now. And that's usually what the Bucs have done in the past. Whether they've officially retired the number or not, they 47 was always going to be John Lynch, and 20 was always going to be Rondy Barber, and so on and so forth. So I would think they would do the same. And if he does get in the ring, maybe they do it this year. Maybe they take his number out as well. I'm not really privy to that right now, but I think there's a pretty good expectation that he deserves it. When I think of 97 with the Bucs, I think of one guy, just like when I think of 99 or any of those other numbers. What they might want to do, though, is buy Simeon Rice a NFL team watch at Brightling Boutique. Have you seen these things? Get down to International Plaza Mall, go upstairs, center of the mall, go into Brightling Boutique, and ask to see their NFL collection. Now, it's the 104th year anniversary of the National Football League. They've been selling these since last winter, actually. While supplies last, 32 NFL teams, 32 team watches. Well, more than 32, but each team has a watch, or a number of them, a limited number at that. But you got to see these Chronomat watches are absolutely gorgeous timepieces. They got the face of the watches, the team colors. They got the logo throughout, and you're just going to love the way if you're a sports fan, NFL fan, any of those teams, you want to make sure you can try to get one of these NFL team watches. But they have other watches as well for men, also for women, sports watches. They're durable, they're beautiful. They have all the different colored wristbands. You name it, they've got it at Brightling Boutique. Go in there, spend some time. It's a terrific store. Have a drink. Let them tell you about their company. The Brightling Company has been in business for over 140 years. They've been in International Plaza Mall now for more than 5. You're going to love their customer service. They're used to dealing with high rollers. We're talking NFL players. You're likely to see a Buccaneer or two, as I have when I've been in the store. It's Brightling Boutique. It's at International Plaza Mall. Check out their watches. You'll get the greatest timepiece you've ever owned, and make sure you let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay.
All right, Steve had tweeted us. He says, I remember a story back in the day about linebacker Hugh Green refusing to go onto the practice field with third-round rookie defensive back Freddie Acorn because he was clueless. Sapp seemed to also have a bite during practice. Got any good stories about practice field disagreements?
There's been a few. There's been a few. I would say the best one was one that Rice talked about when he was down here for his Ring of Honor induction or election ceremony. So, Simeon comes, and look, the Bucs defense had been good for years before Simeon got here. And in fact, they had been to the NFC Championship game. They held the greatest show on turf. They should have won that game 6-5. They give up a late touchdown to Ricky Prohl with 4 minutes and 44 seconds left. And they wind up losing that game. And then the next year, they missed the playoffs. The next year, Simeon Rice becomes a free agent, and the Bucs sign him. And he was the missing piece, as Tony Dungy said, to their defense, which had been great at that point for about 4 or 5 years. They've been at the top of the food chain. And Rice took him to a different level. Now, it helped that he was playing next to the Booger McFarlands and the Warren Sapps and Greg Spires and guys like that, as well as who he had behind him. But Simeon changed everything. But it was interesting because when he got here, he was already a star. He was a rookie of the year. He was a 3rd overall pick. He had already averaged 10 sacks a season. So this was a known player in a bad franchise in Arizona. But when he got here, he had been a star for a long time. But, that was a defense just full of alphas. I mean, full of alphas, not the least of which was Warren Sapp, who played right next to him inside. And it was Warren Sapp's defense as much as it was Derek Brooks or Rondy Barber's or anybody else's, or John Lynch's. And Sapp was always the smartest guy in the room. I mean, he knew where guys were supposed to be, even though he didn't have eyes in the back of his head. If something broke down, he was, right up in their faces of what happened, and all that stuff. He held guys accountable. Very smart, one of the smartest football players I've ever covered. And when Rice got here, you can imagine those two guys kind of eyeballing each other, right? Like, okay, I know who you are. You know who I am, but it was Sapp's team. And Rice talked about how it was difficult, coming in here and, on a team that had been together for so long. He knew how great they were, but he also knew, having watched that Rams game, he goes, if I had been on that team, that pass never gets off. Like they win that game. I knew I could make that kind of difference. But early on, at least, everybody was kind of waiting to see how this is going to go. Now, you couldn't find two guys with more different personalities than Sapp and Rice, right? I mean, but they're both alphas. They're both uber competitive. And, you know, Simeon kind of with his sing song voice and, everything's great. It's wonderful. I know what I can do. I'm going to dominate. And then Sapp was just brusque and abrasive and brutal, right? Like, what went wrong? Like just kind of we could jump you at a moment's notice, but knew that what the hell he was doing. And as Rice told me the story, they get to practice one time early on, and Rice does not get the right line call, and he plays the wrong technique, and there's an error on the defense, and Sapp just jumps his butt, right? Just dog cusses him, and Sapp could have communicated, as Rice says, Sapp could have communicated what he was supposed to do and didn't, and almost to the point where Rice thought maybe that was intentional, like he's just trying to see what would happen. Now, at this point in training camp, everybody's waiting for that first flashpoint to happen between those two guys, and Sapp, according to Simeon, starts dog cussing him, right? And Simeon was like, he had enough, right? Like, you don't talk to me like that, man. You don't come at me like that. And they got into it. Now, when I say got into it, were there punches thrown or anything like that? I don't think so. But it was pretty stressful. It was pretty tense. I guess altercation in practice. And what Sapp later came up to Sim and said, that's what they wanted. They wanted me and you to go at it. That's great. That's everybody waiting for that. That's, we had to do it, that kind of thing. Get it over with. And almost like it was intentional on Sapp's part. But Sim was still like, yeah, I don't go for that. That's not the way I play. I'm not reacting to that kind of stuff. You're not talking to me like that in front of anybody. If you don't think I'm a tough guy, then just keep saying those words, right? So they never, after that, Simeon said that, when they started playing together, they both respected each other's game so much and they both benefited from the other that they never had an issue because they knew that that dude is like me. He's going to go out there and he's going to flat out dominate today. And he knows I'm going to go out here and I'm going to dominate. I'm going to make him better. He's going to make me better. And we're going to run over some people. And that was their focus. And they never, they respected each other too much as players and as men to ever have words again. And but they had to get through that moment. And I guess it was pretty contentious at that.
All right, we'll switch gears here to some baseball. And Craig had tweeted, says, we're now a few months since another failed Rays stadium attempt. Repair starting on the Trop soon. The governor of Florida said recently they want to keep the Rays in Florida, not specifically Tampa Bay. With the Bolts and Bucs up before the Rays concerning Tampa for new homes, how does this end for the Rays?
It's a great question. I don't think anybody knows. If you ask me, I think Stuart Sternberg wants to move this team. I don't think he thinks it can work in Tampa Bay. He's tried it in Tampa. He's tried it in St. Pete. He turned down pretty much everything that he asked for in St. Pete. That signals to me he doesn't really think that there's a future here in Tampa Bay for whatever reason, right? But certainly not on the St. Pete side. And I don't know where the next deal is coming. I think baseball would prefer that he sell this club. And they have not given any indications that they would approve his attempt to move them out of Florida. Now, does that mean that they could go to Orlando, for example, with Sternberg as the owner if they remained in Florida? I'm not sure baseball wants that, but it would be probably preferred to taking up another expansion city or something like that. All I know is that they're going to play here, I believe, until 2028. And in that time, I think if you're a Rays fan, you really have to hope that Sternberg gets frustrated to the point where he, wants to sell the team, knows he can't move it, almost gets backed into a corner, but also gets realistic about the sales price because I've heard a lot of numbers out there that does not match what people think the value of the club is. If the club's valued, let's say, at $1.3 billion, what you hear, and this is unconfirmed, it's just innuendo and rumor and all that stuff, is that he wants $2 billion, that sort of thing. So, is there an ownership group? I think there's a number of groups that I'm aware of that would like to buy the Rays and keep them in Tampa Bay, but you have to have somebody who's willing to sell it, and they have to meet his price, and look, you can buy my house, but you're going to have to offer me well over $1 million for it. I mean, it's like, I'm not just moving to move. And I don't think that Sternberg's looking to sell just because he's tired of the Rays. I don't have a lot of great faith that anything will be done for Sternberg. And you make a good point in that no matter how you look at this, right? The community investment tax has been passed or extended again. Its 30-year commitment elapsed, and then voters put it back in. That's really what they use to build Raymond James. And quite frankly, it's what they're going to use to reform Raymond James. And these days, when you do a major renovation, you're talking about over $1 billion for a renovation, not a new stadium, a renovation. If you're building a new stadium, football stadium at least, you're talking about $2 billion. I don't think you can build one anymore for less than $2 billion. So the pecking order is what it is. I mean, which franchise is more valuable to the area? Which sport is more popular in the United States? It's the NFL. You cannot, will not, should not lose an NFL franchise at this point, although those teams have moved. But I think everybody, if you're going to dip into that community investment tax, the Bucs are going to have the biggest piece of the pie. And then I think the Lightning want to do stuff with their arena. And, obviously, where does that leave the Rays? I'm not sure. I don't know. I think they would love to be in Tampa. I think playing there at Steinbrenner has probably been cool for them. They're not going to be outdoors. It's got to be climate controlled. The Bucs are going to take their stadium, strip it down, redo it. They feel like it has good bones. It'll be a renovation, not a rebuild. But they also want to develop all that land around it. They want to take that, and that's going to be a big negotiation between the city and the county and all those folks. And so where does that leave the Rays? I, it's going to be tough, man. I don't see a great way out of this unless the franchise is sold. If the franchise were sold, I think the new owners could strike a similar deal, but they'd have to do it soon because St. Petersburg is going to move on with developing that land near the gas plant area there. And they're not going to wait. I mean, the Trop will be raised before, this team gets a new stadium location. So it doesn't look good to me unless baseball or others can convince Stuart Sternberg to sell the team, because I think he's intent on moving it. I just don't think he can get the stadium deal he wants in Tampa or St. Petersburg. And I think a new ownership group that was committed to the area probably could. But it's really too early to know. I don't think we're going to know anything till we get closer to 2028 when their lease is up. That's, again, another deadline. They're going to have to repair the Trop. They owe them a major league stadium. And in any case, it looks like they're going to be here for the next 2 or 3 years anyway. And then we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm not real optimistic. And I think if those new homes, I would say the Bucs are going to get theirs probably first, and then the Bolts if they need to renovate.
Well, yeah, I mean, Amalie Arena is coming up on 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean that's the lifespan of these things. They need to be rebuilt, redone, or razed to the ground and built again. So I think they're going to take care of the Rays and the Lightning for sure. I just don't know how you can deal with Sternberg. I mean, Sternberg got everything he asked for in that deal in St. Pete, including the development rights. And then for whatever reason, after the hurricane, decided I don't want to take this deal. I'm not taking this deal. And he blamed it on the county commissioner. You can blame it on people, but at the end of the day, they were willing to give him what he asked for, and he walked away. And only he knows why. But that doesn't sound like somebody that anyone's going to put to the front of the list when it comes to all these clubs needing renovations and things. I think Bucs and Lightning will go, and then we'll find out if they can get new ownership for the Rays. I think that's where we're at. All right, there's a great sample of some mailbag questions there. We'll get to the rest of them early next week if you want to hang in there. The Rays open up a series against the Marlins. They have a day aim to start that series at 1:10, and that's because Jason Light's favorite band, Metallica, is in concert tonight. So I'm sure the GM will be there, along with probably several other folks that we know. So, yeah, enjoy your day baseball businessman special, Marlins and Rays today. And then the Stanley Cup Game 2 between Edmonton and Florida. We'll see if Florida can even that series up in the Stanley Cup Finals. So also, listen, go out, be safe this weekend, enjoy it. Go see our friends at Brightling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the NFL 32-team watches for your wife, for your girlfriend, sports watches. She's going to love it, but just make sure you tell them that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I am Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great weekend, everybody.